Welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Management Studies, SOMS, Postgraduate Diploma in Financial Markets Practice, PGDFMP. MFP2 Equity Derivatives. Block 1 Introduction to Derivatives. Unit 2 Basic Derivative Products. 2.1 Introduction. Derivative instruments enable the participants to either transfer risk or reward or assume risk and reward without obtaining ownership or possession of the underlying asset. For example, if you believe that the price of gold will rise, bullish view, you could actually buy gold and hold it in your inventory for some time and gain if the price of gold actually moves up in accordance with your view. However, this transaction will involve practical challenges like need for cash to buy gold, storage and safe custody of gold, and managing the inventory of gold. Instead, you could buy a derivative instrument, which may react as far as prices are concerned in a manner very similar to gold prices, but without a. paying for it in full, b. being concerned about inventory handling and storage. One of such instruments could be gold futures, which are traded on commodity exchanges all over the world. In this unit, we will be discussing futures, which are traded on stock exchanges and settlement is guaranteed by stock exchanges and the two parties do not know each other, and other derivative instruments including forwards, which are contracts between two parties on a bilateral basis, options and swaps. Futures and forward contracts are the simplest of derivative instruments and hence are discussed first. They are similar to each other in many respects. Hence, we first discuss both of them together. Then we will distinguish between the two and understand them at a more detailed level. A futures or forward contract is a type of derivative instrument or financial contract in which two parties agree to exchange cash or financial instruments for cash or financial instruments or physical commodities for future delivery at a particular price. 2.2 Futures and forwards. Let's say, for example, that you decide to subscribe to a business journal. As the buyer, you enter into an agreement with the distributing company to receive a specific number of business journals at a certain price every month for the next year. This contract made with the distributing company is similar to a futures or forward contract in that you have agreed to receive a product at a future date with the price and terms for delivery already set. You have secured your price for now and the next year, even if the price of business rises during that time. By entering into this agreement with the distributing company, you have reduced your risk of higher prices. That's how the futures and forward market works. Except that instead of a distributing company, a producer of cotton may be trying to secure a selling price for the next season's crop, or a textile manufacturer may be trying to secure a buying price of cotton, so as to be more assured of his profits from production of textiles from cotton. So the farmer and the textile manufacturer may enter into a futures or forward contract requiring the delivery of 5,000 units of cotton to the buyer in June at a price of Rs 500 per unit. By entering into this futures contract, the farmer and the textile manufacturer secure a price that both parties believe will be a fair price in June. It is this contract and not the cotton per se that can then be bought and sold in the futures market. So, a futures contract is an agreement between two parties. A short position, the party who agrees to deliver a commodity or a financial instrument. A long position, the party who agrees to receive a commodity or a financial instrument. In the above scenario, the farmer would be the holder of the short position, agreeing to sell, while the textile manufacturer would be the holder of the long, agreeing to buy. We will talk more about the outlook of the long and short positions in the section on strategies, but for now it's important to know that every contract involves both positions. In every futures and forward contract, the important terms are specified and understood clearly upfront at the point of execution of the derivative contract. The buyer, the seller, the underlying quality specifications of the underlying, the quantity, the specific price per unit, the date of delivery, the time of delivery, the location of delivery, dispute redressal mechanisms if any are all put down in writing. The price of a futures or forward contract is represented by the agreed upon price of the underlying commodity. or financial instrument that will be delivered in the future. For example, in the above scenario, the price of the contract is 5,000 units of cotton at a price of Rs. 500 per unit. The notional value of the contract would be determined at 2,500,000 rupees. The term notional is used because at the point of transacting the contract, this amount is not exchanged. Sometimes, the term exposure is used to indicate that the parties are exposed to risks and rewards with reference to this notional value. In many cases, the underlying asset in a futures or forward contract may not be traditional commodities at all. In financial future and forwards, the underlying asset can be currencies, securities or financial instruments, and intangible assets are referenced items, such as stock indexes and interest rates. 2.3 Futures contracts. A futures contract is a standardized contract to buy or sell a specified commodity of standardized quality at a certain date in the future, at a market-determined price, the futures price. The contracts are traded on a futures exchange. Futures contracts are not direct securities like stocks, bonds, rights or warrants. In most countries, such futures contracts fall within the definition of the term securities and are governed by regulations that apply to securities. A futures contract gives the holder the obligation to make or take delivery under the terms of the contract. The seller delivers the underlying asset to the buyer, or, if it is a cash-settled futures contract, then cash is transferred from the futures trader who sustained a loss to the one who made a profit. To exit the commitment prior to the settlement date, the holder of a futures position will offset his/her position by either selling a long position or buying back, covering, a short position, effectively closing out the futures position and its contract obligations. The profits and losses of a futures contract depend on the daily movements of the market for that contract and are calculated on a daily basis. For example, say the futures contracts for cotton increases to 520 rupees per unit the day after the above farmer and textile manufacturer enter into their futures contract OFRs 500 per unit. The farmer, as the holder of the short position, has lost 20 rupees per unit because the selling price just increased from the future price at which she is obliged to sell his cotton. The textile manufacturer, as the long position, has profited by 20 rupees per unit because the price he is obliged to pay is less than what the rest of the market is obliged to pay in the future for cotton. On the day the change occurs, the farmer's account is debited 100,000 rupees, 20 rupees per unit x 5,000 units, and the textile manufacturer's account is credited by 100,000 rupees, 20 rupees per unit x 5,000 units. As the market moves every day, these kinds of adjustments are made on a day-to-day basis. Unlike the stock market, futures positions are settled on a daily basis, which means that gains and losses from a day's trading are deducted or credited to a person's account each day. In the stock market, the capital gains or losses from movements in price aren't realized until the investor decides to sell the stock or cover his/her short position. As the accounts of the parties in futures contracts are adjusted every day, most transactions in the futures market are settled in cash, and the actual physical commodity is bought or sold in the cash market. Prices in the cash and futures market tend to move parallel to one another, and when a futures contract expires, the prices merge into one price. So on the date either party decides to close out their futures position, the contract is settled as far as that party or those parties are concerned. If the parties in our example settle the cotton futures contract at 550 rupees per unit, the textile manufacturer makes a profit of 50 rupees per unit and the farmer makes a loss of 50 rupees per unit in the futures market. But after the settlement of the futures contract, the textile manufacturer still needs cotton to make cloth, so he will in actuality buy his cotton in the cash market or from a cotton pool. If he were to buy this cotton at 580 rupees per unit, a total OFRs 2,900,000, his net cost will be 530 rupees because his profit OFRs 50 per unit from the futures market will help him to reduce his final cost of cotton. The farmer will sell his cotton in the spot market at 580 rupees per unit, but his net realization is only 530 rupees per unit because of the loss of 50 rupees per unit that he has suffered in the futures market. Now that you observe that a futures contract is really more like a financial position, you can also notice that the two parties in the cotton futures contract discussed above could be two speculators rather than a farmer and a textile manufacturer. In such a case, the short speculator would simply have lost 50 rupees per unit while the long speculator would have gained that amount. In other words, neither would have to go to the cash market to buy or sell the commodity after the contract expires. Futures contracts are structured by an exchange. The exchange acts as counterparty in legality to each player. Thus, if player A makes a gain and player B makes a loss, player A need not be concerned about whether player B will remit his losses on time or not. The exchange takes responsibility for paying the gains of player A to a on-timely basis. This is legally referred to as novation. Futures contracts carry an expiry date on which day all open positions are squared up. The methodology applicable to final settlement prices is disseminated in advance. For example, in the Indian equity derivatives market, futures prices on final expiry are based on the last 30 minutes volume weighted average price of the underlying equity market. The exchange's clearing house, or clearing corporation, also establishes mechanisms for risk management, lays down admission criteria for broker members and regulates their functioning, lays down capital adequacy and liquid net worth norms for its member brokers, specifies margins that are to be collected and released, provides for clearing of trades, provides a framework for daily settlement and provides legal settlement guarantee to all participants. Basic derivative products, standardization. Futures contracts ensure their liquidity by being highly standardized, usually by specifying the underlying asset or instrument. This could be anything from a barrel of crude oil to a short-term interest rate. The type of settlement, either cash settlement or physical settlement. The amount and units of the underlying asset per contract. This can be the notional amount of bonds, a fixed number of barrels of oil, units of foreign currency, the notional amount of the deposit over which the short-term interest rate is traded, etc., the currency in which the futures contract is quoted, the grade of the deliverable. In the case of bonds, this specifies which bonds can be delivered. In the case of physical commodities, this specifies not only the quality of the underlying goods but also the manner and location of delivery. For example, the NYMEX light sweet crude oil contract specifies the acceptable sulfur content and AP-specific gravity, as well as the pricing point, the location where delivery must be made, the delivery month, the last trading date, the last trading time, the expiry date, the methodology of computing daily settlement prices, the methodology of computing final settlement prices. Settlement, physical vs cash settlement. Settlement can be done in one of two ways, as specified per type of futures contract. There are two types of settlement, physical and cash, or gross and net. Physical delivery, the quantum of the underlying asset specified in the contract is delivered by the seller of the contract to the exchange, and similar quantum by the exchange to the buyer of the contract. The buying party pays the requisite amount of cash to the exchange, which is promptly handed over to the seller by the exchange. Physical delivery is more common in commodities and bonds. In practice, it occurs only on a minority of contracts. Most contracts are cancelled out by purchasing a covering position, i.e., buying a contract to cancel out an earlier sale, covering a short, or selling a contract to liquidate an earlier purchase, covering a long. If you have entered into a long futures contract to buy 10 tons of cotton, you to pay for these I0 on expiry. Your counterparty will physically deliver these 10 tons of cotton to the exchange. Cash settlement. A net cash payment is made or received based on the underlying reference rate, R. If you have entered into a long futures contract to buy 10 tons of cotton and the price of your transaction is 80,000 rupees per ton and the price on expiry day is 85,000 rupees per ton, you will receive Rs. 5,000 per ton, i.e., 50,000 rupees from the exchange on expiry. The counterparty, seller, will pay the amount OFRs 50,000 to the exchange. Expiry I tilde, TB tilde time and the day that a particular delivery month of a futures contract stops trading and the final settlement price for that contract month and year obtains. Players. The players in the futures market fall into three categories: speculators, hedgers and arbitrageurs. Hedgers. Farmers, manufacturers, importers and exporters can all be hedgers. A hedger buys or sells in the futures market to secure the future price of a commodity intended to be sold at a later date in the cash market. This helps protect against price risks. The holders of the long position in futures contracts, the buyers of the commodity, are trying to secure as LBW a price as possible. The short holders of the contract, the sellers of the commodity, will want to secure as high a price as possible. The futures contract provides a definite price certainty for both parties, which reduces the risks associated with price volatility. Hedging by means of futures contracts can also be used as a means to lock in an acceptable price margin between the cost of the raw material and the retail cost of the final product sold. Speculators. Speculators have no inherent interest in the underlying other than to benefit from possible future price movements. They aim to profit from the very price change that hedgers are protecting themselves against. Hedgers want to minimize their risk no matter what they're investing in, while speculators want to increase their risk and therefore maximize their profits. JT is quite possible that speculator buying a futures contract low in order to sell high in future would most likely be confronting a hedger as counterparty who is selling that contract in order to secure a certain price for him and reduce the risk that the price of the underlying may decline in the future. Arbitrageurs. Arbitrageurs are hard-working professionals who are on the hunt for any mispricing that markets may throw up from time to time. They are on the lookout for zero-risk or very low-risk opportunities whereby they can generate a reasonable but a sure return on their positions. Most of the time, their positions are in combinations which tend to cancel out each other in concept, but in practice generate a small differential. Most arbitrages are similar to buying potatoes in Mumbai at 10 rupees per kilogram and selling them in Navi Mumbai at 10 rupees 0.20 per kilogram and profiting 20 paise from this trade. Basic derivative products. Margins. In the futures market, margin has a definition distinct from its definition in the stock market, where margin is the use of borrowed money to purchase securities. In the futures market, margin refers to the initial deposit of good faith made into an account in order to enter into a futures contract. Initial margin is the money required to open a derivatives position. It is a security deposit to ensure that traders have sufficient funds to meet any potential loss from a trade. In case of loss or if the value of tile initial margin is being eroded, the broker will make a margin call in order to restore the amount of initial margin available. A futures account is marked to market daily. If the margin drops below the margin maintenance requirement established by the exchange listing the futures, a margin call will be issued to bring the account back up to the required level. The minimum level margin is determined by the futures exchange and is usually 5% to 10% of the futures contract. These predetermined initial margin amounts are continuously under review. At times of high market volatility, initial margin requirements can be raised. 2.4 Forward contracts. A forward contract is a binding obligation to buy or sell a certain asset at a pre-agreed price on a certain future date. It is a contract undertaken between two parties who are willing to take a risk on each other, counterparty, for performance of the obligations imposed by the contract. If you view the forward contract from the buyer's point of view, the price of the underlying instrument, in whatever form, at the time of expiry of the forward contract and the underlying is delivered by the counterparty. The most typical forward is a forward foreign currency contract, which involves the exchange among two currencies such as US dollars and Indian rupees. The forward price of such a contract is commonly contrasted with the spot price, which is the price at which the asset changes hands on the spot date. The difference between The spot and the forward price is the forward premium or forward discount. In the case of a prime IURN, the purchasing party is ready to pay a higher price than the spot rate. In the case of a discount, the selling party is ready to sell at a price that is lower than the spot rate. How a forward contract works. Suppose Mr. A wants to buy an apartment a year from now. At the same time, suppose that Mr. B currently owns a 10 rupees 000 house that he wishes to sell a year from now. Both parties could enter into a forward contract with each other. Suppose that they both agree on the sale price in 1 year's time of 1,400,000 rupees, more below on why the sale price should be this amount. Mr. A and Mr. B have entered into a forward contract. Mr. A, because he is buying the underlying, is said to have taken a long position. Conversely, Mr. B will have taken a short position. At the end of 1 year, suppose that the market valuation of Mr. B's house is Rs. 1,600,000. Then, because Mr. B is obliged to sell to Mr. A for only Rs. 1,400,000, Mr. A will make a profit of Rs. 200,000. To see why this is so, one needs only to recognize that Mr. A can buy from Mr. B for 14 rupees 000 and immediately sell to the market for Rs. 1,600,000. Mr. A has made the difference in profit. In contrast, Mr. B has suffered a loss of Rs. 200,000. Let us consider a business example in the currency market. Say there is an import transaction where an importer's shipment will be reaching India after 3 months and the payment is due on receiving the shipment. It is possible that due to exchange fluctuations USD-INR rate may move upwards against the INR and he may have to pay more in rupee terms. If the importer believes that the exchange rate after 3 months at the time of retirement of the import bill will not be favorable to him, he may like to fix an assured rate for this future transaction. He will walk across to a friendly neighborhood bank and book a long forward on the USD, whereby his USD rate will be fixed today for settlement a 3 months. If he enters into this forward contract at 47 rupees and 25 paise, he will pay 47 rupees and 25 paise after 3 months and the bank will pay him $1 in return. He can use these dollars to pay for his imports. If the spot rate of the US dollar is 49 rupees, the importer would be overjoyed as he would save 1 rupee and 75 paise because of this long forward. If the spot rate of the US dollar were to be 45 rupees, he would feel sad as he would have lost 2 rupees and 25 paise because of this forward trade. The forward trade in this example is not intended to maximize profits but to minimize losses and to reduce uncertainty and risks inherent in this transaction. Unlike futures contracts, which occur through an exchange and an associated clearing house, forward contracts are privately negotiated and are not standardized. Further, the two parties must bear each other's credit risk, which is not the case with a futures contract. Also, since the contracts are not exchange traded, there is no marking to market requirement, which allows a buyer to avoid almost all capital outflows initially. Though some counterparties might set collateral requirements, forwards are priced in a manner similar to futures. Like in the case of a futures contract, the first step in pricing a forward is to add the spot price to the cost of carry, interest forgone, convenience yield, storage costs and interest, dividend received on the underlying. Unlike a futures contract though, the price may also include a prime IUM for counterparty credit risk, and the fact that there is not daily marking to market process to minimize default risk. If there is no allowance for these credit risks, then the forward price will equal the futures price. Forwards are a convenient vehicle for hedging or speculation. For example, an airline can conveniently hedge its fuel costs by purchasing jet fuel several months forward. The hedge eliminates price exposure, and it doesn't require an initial outlay of funds to purchase the fuel. The airline is hedged without having to take delivery of or store the jet fuel until it is needed. It doesn't even have to enter into the forward with the ultimate supplier of the jet fuel. If the forward is cash settled, the hedge can be put on with any counterparty. 2.5 Difference between futures and forwards. Fundamentally, forward and futures contracts have the same function. Both types of contracts allow people to buy or sell a specific type of asset at a specific time at a given PNCE. However, it is in the specific details that these contracts differ. First of all, futures contracts are exchange traded and, therefore, are standardized contracts. Forward contracts, on the other hand, are private agreements between two parties and are not as rigid in their stated terms and conditions. Because forward contracts are private agreements, there is always a chance that a party may default on its side of the agreement. Futures contracts have clearing houses that guarantee the transactions, which drastically lowers the probability of default to almost never. Secondly, the specific details concerning settlement and delivery are quite distinct. For forward contracts, settlement of the contract occurs at the end of the contract. Futures contracts are marked to market daily, which means that daily changes are settled day by day until the end of the contract. Furthermore, settlement for futures contracts can occur over a range of dates. Forward contracts, on the other hand, only possess one settlement date. Lastly, because futures contracts are quite frequently employed by speculators who bet on the direction in which an asset's price will move, they are usually closed out prior to maturity and delivery usually never happens. On the other hand, forward contracts are mostly used by hedgers that want to eliminate the volatility of an asset's price, and delivery of the asset or cash settlement will usually take place. In many cases, exiting a forward contract before expiry may be difficult or financially unattractive. 2.6 Swaps. A swap is an agreement between two parties to exchange sequences of cash flows for a preset period of time. Usually, at the time the contract is initiated, at least one of these series of cash flows is determined by a random or uncertain variable, such as an interest rate, foreign exchange rate, equity price, or commodity price. Characteristics of swap markets. The main characteristics of swaps are: swaps are custom tailored to the needs of the counterparties. Swaps meet the specific needs of the customers, counterparties. Exchange trading necessarily involves some amount of transparency. By contrast, in the swap market only the counterparties know about the transaction. Counterparties can tailor-make the contract specifications including notional values, currencies, tenor etc. Futures and options exchanges are subject to considerable regulations. Till today, the swap market faces much lower rigor in this regard. Swap market face the following limitations. Each party must find a counterparty which wishes to take opposite position. Since swap is an agreement between two private parties, it cannot be terminated at one's instance. The termination also requires acceptance by the counter party. Future and option exchanges are guarantors to the transactions, whereas there is no such guarantee with the swap. Let us now discuss the two most common and most basic types of swaps. Plain vanilla interest rate swaps and currency swaps. Plain vanilla interest rate swaps. Interest rate swaps are used to hedge interest rate risks as well as to take on interest rate risks. If a treasurer is of the view that interest rates will be falling in the future, he may convert his fixed interest liability into floating interest liability, and also his floating rate assets into fixed rate assets, if he expects the interest rates to go up in the future. Neither vice versa. Since there are no movements of principal, these are off balance sheet instruments and the capital requirements on these instruments are minimal. The most common and simplest swap is a plain vanilla interest rate swap. In this SWFP, Party A agrees to pay Party B a predetermined fixed rate of interest on a notional principal on specific dates for a specified period of time. Concurrently, Party B agrees to make payments based on a floating interest rate to Party A on that same notional principal on the same specified dates for the same specified time period. In a plain vanilla swap, the two cash flows are paid in the same currency. The specified payment dates are called settlement dates, and the time between are called settlement periods. Because swaps are customized contracts, interest payments may be made annually, quarterly, monthly, or at any other interval determined by the parties. Going purely by the definition, it is hardly clear why the two parties to an interest rate swap would wish to enter into such an agreement. To understand why an interest rate swap can be advantageous to both parties, consider the following example. Two companies both wish to borrow 10 million rupees. Company A is a giant conglomerate with an excellent credit rating. Company B is a medium-sized company of 10 years, standing with a lower credit rating. Both companies have the option of borrowing either at fixed rates or at floating rates. Company A would prefer a fixed rate obligation while Company B prefers a floating rate. Clearly B's cost of funds is higher than whether the loan is on fixed rate or on floating rate basis. However, in the fixed rate case, B's extra cost is 1.5%, 9.0% minus 7.5%, while in the floating rate market the extra cost is 3%. In economic terms, A has an absolute advantage over B in both fixed and floating rate markets, but B has a comparative advantage in the fixed rate market. C Limited, a broker or a banker, comes forward and arranges a swap. Under this arrangement, A actually borrows 10 million rupees from a bank at MIBOR 0.5% and B borrows 10 million rupees from a bank at 9.0%. As a separate transaction, which constitutes the swap, A, and C agree as follows. A will pay C a fixed rate of 7.0%. A will receive from C a floating rate of MIBOR 0.5%. B will pay C a floating rate of MIBOR 0.5%. B will receive from C a fixed rate of 6.5%. The transactions I to IV constitute the swap. It should be noted that the swap is independent of the borrowing initially undertaken by A and B, and the banks, which lent the funds to A and B, are in no way concerned with the swap. A remains liable for all obligations to its bank and likewise B to its bank. The swap binds only A and C. To understand the benefits from the swap, consider the net cash flows of A and C in the table below. It may be seen that the net result is A. For A fixed rate obligation at 7%, this is better than the 7.5% for which A would have paid if it had directly taken a fixed rate loan. For B, a floating rate obligation at MIBOR 3.0%, this is better than the MIBOR 3.5% which B would have paid if it had directly taken a floating rate loan. For C, a profit of 0.5% for arranging the transaction. It was noted earlier that the interest differential on floating one-day debt was 3% while on fixed rate debt it was 1.5%. The gap between the differentials was 3 to 1.5% equals 1.5%. It is this 1.5% which has been shared as gains by A and C, each getting 0.5%. Currency swaps. Currency swaps involve an exchange of cash flows in two different currencies. These are generally used to raise funds in a market where the corporate has a comparative advantage and to achieve a portfolio in a different currency of its choice, at a cost lower than if it accessed the market of the second currency directly. However, since these types of swaps involve an exchange of two currencies, an exchange rate, generally the prevailing spot rate, is used to calculate the amount of cash flows, apart from interest rates relevant to these two currencies. By its special nature, these instruments are used for hedging risk arising out of interest rates and exchange rates. A currency swap is a contract which commits two counterparties to an exchange over an agreed period of two streams of payments in different currencies, each calculated using a different interest rate, and an exchange at the end of the period of the corresponding principal amounts at an exchange rate agreed at the start of the contract. The rationale for currency swaps can be explained with the help of the following example. Suppose an Indian company, say ABC Limited, wants to raise funds in the USA. At the same time, a prominent American company, say XYZ, wants to borrow in Indian rupees for a project in India. ABC Limited, though a blue chip in India, may not be well known in the US debt market and would therefore have to pay a higher rate of interest than its credentials would otherwise warrant. Similarly, XYZ may not receive a rate of interest in India that truly reflects its credit rating because of the obscurity of the name in India. It would be beneficial to both companies if ABC Limited borrows in rupees XYZ in dollars, and the two then swap the liabilities. ABC, an Indian company, and XYZ, an American multinational, are both contemplating raising of funds. XYZ, by virtue of its larger size, greater diversification etc., has a better credit rating than ABC in both markets. The rates at which the companies can borrow is as follows. ABC needs dollars while XYZ needs rupees. The differential is 1% in India but 3% in America. Both parties stand to gain by the following arrangement through MD, a middleman. Assume 40 rupees equals $1. ABC will borrow in India a sum OFRs 40 crores at 14%. B. XYZ will borrow $10 million in the USA at 3%. C. Both parties enter into a swap on the following terms. I. The principal sums are exchanged, i.e., ABC pays XYZ 40 crore rupees and receives $10 million. E. ABC will pay MD dollar interest at 5.5% and receive rupee interest at 14%. E. XYZ will pay MD rupee interest at 12.5% and receive from MD dollar interest at 3%. The cash flows are as under. LOOK80. The screen. ABC and XYZ have both achieved a lower cost of capital than if they had borrowed directly in the other currency. MD gains 2.5% in dollars and loses 1.5% in rupees, producing a net gain of 1%. However, it shall be noted that MD bears an exchange rate risk. It is possible to arrange the payments differently with the swap parties bearing some or all of the risk. The differential in rates was 3% in USA and 1% in India. This left a gap of 2% to be shared as gains by the parties to the swap transaction. In the above transaction, ABC gains 0.5% by effectively borrowing at 5.5% instead of 6%. XYZ gains 0.5% by borrowing at an effective rate of 12.5% instead of 13%, and MD gains 1%, 2.5% in dollars, minus 1.5% in rupees. We can now see from the above that currency swaps differ from interest rate swaps in that currency swaps involve an exchange of payments in two currencies. Not only exchange of interest, but also an exchange of principal amounts. Unlike interest rate swaps, currency swaps are not off-balance sheet instruments, since they involve exchange of principal at the end of the period. The interest payments at various intervals are calculated either at a fixed interest rate or a floating rate index as agreed between the parties. Currency swaps can also use two fixed interest rates for the two different currencies. Different from the interest rate swaps, the agreed exchange rate need not be related to the market. The principal amounts can be exchanged even at the start of the swap. Equity swaps. An equity swap is an arrangement by which one party pays to the counterparty an amount based on the value of the shares in a company and receives from the counter party an amount of fixed or floating interest on an equivalent notional value. In effect, an equity position is converted into a deposit or debenture, and vice versa for the counterparty. A limited owns a large stake of 10 lakh shares in B Limited, a quoted sister company. The shares are currently quoted at 1 rupee 000 per share. A is apprehensive that the price of B's shares may fall, but does not want to sell its stake as that would mean relinquishing its say over the management of B Limited. Instead, it enters into an equity swap with C Limited, a financial institution, whereby A will pay C annually the value of all dividends declared by B plus or minus any net appreciation or depreciation in the share price from the base value of 1 rupee 000 on its 10 lakh shares. CY11 pay annually the market floating rate of interest on a sum of Rs 100 crore, being the market value of A's holding at the time of the swap. Other swaps. Principal only swap. This is a swap of foreign currency with Indian rupee where no interest payments on foreign currency take place. The foreign currency and Indian rupee principal would be exchanged on maturity and the forward premium would be recovered through a series of periodic INR payments. Coupon swap. This is a currency swap where only the interest payments are swapped between counterparts and the principals themselves are not exchanged. A stream of US dollar LIBOR interest payments can be exchanged into INR payments at a fixed or floating rate on an equivalent INR notional. Constant maturity treasury swaps. In these swaps, the floating rate benchmark is of a tenor, which is different from the settlement tenor itself. To quote an example, consider a 5-year swap with annual resets, where the floating rate benchmark is the 5-year gold bond, as opposed to a 1-year bond. Quantos. This is a swap with varying combinations of interest rate, currency and equity swap features, where payments are based on the movement of two different countries' interest rates. The floating rate benchmark could relate to a currency different from the currency of a swap. An example of such a swap is an INR IRAs where a fixed rate is exchanged for US dollar LIBOR benchmark applied to a notional principal. Though they deal with two different currencies, payments are settled in the same currency. For example, a typical Quanto swap would involve a U.S. investor paying 6-month LIBOR in US dollars for a US dollar L million loan and receive payments in US dollars at the 6-month MIBOR 75 basis points. This implies that while the notional principal currency is in USD, the floating benchmark is not a USD benchmark, but that of other currency. Such products are attractive for speculators and investors who wish to have exposure to a foreign asset, but without the corresponding exchange rate risk. Quantos are attractive because they shield the purchaser from exchange rate fluctuations. If a US investor were to invest directly in the Japanese stocks that comprise the Nikkei, he would be exposed to both fluctuations in the Nikkei index and fluctuations in the USOI-JPY exchange rate. Essentially, a Quanto has an embedded currency forward with a variable notional amount. Cap and flow agreements. Cap and flow agreements are those in which one party for a premium agrees to compensate the other if a designated reference is different from a predetermined level. When the seller agrees to pay the buyer if the designated reference exceeds a predetermined level, the agreement is referred to as a cap. The agreement is referred to as a flow when the seller agrees to pay the buyer if a designated reference falls below a predetermined level. The designated reference could be a specific interest rate such as LIBOR or the prime rate, the rate of return, or on some domestic or foreign stock market index such as the NSE or the DAX, or an exchange rate such as the exchange rate between the US dollar and the Japanese yen. The predetermined level is called the strike. As with a swap, a cap and a flow are based on a notional amount. A corporate may borrow from its bank at a floating rate of MIBOR 3%. In this transaction, the corporate is exposed to possible increases in MIBOR. To protect itself, the corporate may buy a cap, SAT MIBOR at 8%, from a derivative counterparty where the counterparty will pay the corporate any excess if MIBOR were to move above 8%. If MIBOR moves to 8.50%, the corporate would receive 0.5% from the derivative counterparty. The corporate has effectively capped its maximum interest rate at 11%. MIBOR of maximum 8% plus spread of 3%. To get such a facility, the corporate would pay a premium to the derivative counterparty. In this example, 8% would be referred to as the strike. If MIBOR stays within 8% during the tenor of this cap, the corporate will receive nothing. Interpretation of a cap and flow. In a cap or flow, the buyer pays a fee that represents the maximum amount the buyer can lose and the maximum amount the seller of the agreement can gain. The only party required to perform is the seller. The buyer of a cap benefits if the designated reference rises above the strike because the seller must compensate the buyer. The buyer of a flow benefits if the designated reference falls below the strike because the seller must compensate the buyer. Some applications of swaps. Banks use swaps among themselves to offset positions created in outright forwards done with customers. For instance, suppose a firm bought CHF forward against $3-month forward. On August 30th, the delivery date is December 1st. By late November, it realizes that it does not need the CHF on December 1st but on December 14th. On November 29th, it can do a swap. selling CHF spot and buying it for delivery on December 14. The CHF, received from the original forward contract, is used to deliver against the spot leg of the swap.